Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
And that Russia is aiding Iran's war effort by providing intel on U.S. military targets. When President Trump was asked about this, here's how he reacted.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here.
What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here. And that meeting that the president was at, that was so much more difficult, so much harder to get past than the question that reporter asked, which was, what about the Russians providing intelligence to our enemies that are killing and destroying Americans overseas, dead Americans? That question pales in comparison to that meeting he was at. That meeting was about college sports. College sports, the most difficult question of our time. The most difficult question of American history. I mean, obviously. Well, just for instance, if college sports wasn't the most difficult question, what would that mean? Just in case this story, just if, I know, on a frivolous flyby, if this story was more important than college sports, I have the story from 4 people, reputable. Yet in none of those 4 stories was the most important question asked, if this was indeed that important, which is not. It's not, of course. It's not. In case it is, none of these 4 stories ask the most important question. Let's start with number 1.
So right now, Russians are totally losing it because their internet is gone. Not just sat-nav, not just GPS, the whole damn thing. Interviews in Moscow, the capital of Russia, the last place you'd expect this to happen, show residents today losing their minds, swearing, saying they can't use GPS, they can't use things like Uber, taxis, they can't pay with their card.
Скажите, а у вас работает мобильный интернет?
Нет.
Хуёво это. Хуёво. Непонятно зачем.
У вас есть мобильный интернет?
Беспорядок.
Everything is down. And now, reports in local newspapers show that sales of things like walkie-talkies and printout maps are up over 100%. This has never happened in modern-day Russia.
The largest increase, probably a record, has been in sales of paper maps. Sales of road atlases jumped 170%, folding maps up 70%, sales of Moscow maps up 20%. People walking around, looking very confused, staring at their phones, but unable to get any internet on them. Forget email. Carrier pigeon would probably work better.
And Putin promised to take Russia back to the glory days of the Soviet Union. And he's just done that by bringing them back to a country without internet and a country without communications. And this is happening for one reason, and that's that Putin is terrified of a coup. So he's shutting down basically all communication systems. He started by shutting down Telegram. And Telegram isn't just an app that Russians use. It is the app that Russians use. 74% of Russians have Telegram or had Telegram. Over 90 million people. It was the way that Russians got their information outside of the Russian mainstream media. So that went down first. And this was the beginning of Putin's crackdown on, again, information. And he's turning his country into a full-blown North Korean totalitarian state. And the reason that Putin is terrified of information being shared right now is because his military are slowly turning against him. There are countless videos of majors, commanders, generals complaining about the situation on the front line. Russia is losing ground right now. This country is pushing the front line in the right direction, and he doesn't want people finding out about it, not in the military and not in civilian life. He's also expected to do a new wave of mobilizations, which is going to cause potential social unrest, so he doesn't want people to know about that. But most of all, look what happened with Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner group. He ended up dying in a plane accident, just like all of his other generals. But what happened with Prigozhin shows how unstable and fragile the Russian army actually is. So yeah, Putin is very likely in ultra-paranoid mode right now, which probably explains why the commander of air defense has just fallen out of a window, probably explains why the first minister of defense has just been arrested. These are very, very high-level officials being taken out. That doesn't happen unless something is deeply wrong in the Russian army, and it looks like that's what the case is. But to go deeper, the Russian army isn't just annoyed about the fact that Starlink has gone down. This graph honestly blew my mind. It shows 74% of Starlink communications in this country were basically being used by Russians. So you can imagine the absolute chaos and devastation that turning off Starlink would have caused. And it doesn't even stop there. It looks like 4 Storm Shadow missiles took out one of the most important microelectronics plants in Russia. And it looks like that was probably vital to supplying weapon systems, navigation systems for missiles, the very, very important parts needed for things like drones and modern day warfare. And Russians are so angry about that they actually admit that it happened. They blame the United Kingdom for supplying the Storm Shadows. And usually Russians cover that up. But this was so devastating they have to talk about it in the news. And to go even further than that, it looks like very expensive S-300 systems, these are air defense, were taken out, and very, very expensive radars in the last few days. These things are almost impossible to replace during wartime. And there are videos of this constantly circulating the internet. So again, let's just recap how devastating this is for the Russian army right now. Their communication systems buried, Telegram and Starlink completely gone. They are losing ground on the front line in a way they haven't since 2023. Their radars, their S-300s, their missile systems are being destroyed, and their funding, which is Russian oil through refineries, through the Shadow Fleet, are both being hit with Ukrainian drones right now. But on the subject of oil, there's a wild card in all of this, and that is Iran. It looks like Russia are about to have their sanctions lifted, thanks to Trump, to ease oil prices around the world. And that looks like Russia are about to increase how much oil they can sell to other countries. It could add $5 billion per month to Russia's budget. And that isn't good news for Ukraine. However, Russia still needs to be able to pump that oil out of the ground to sell it. And if Ukraine continues hitting the sources, the refineries, the places that the oil is being pulled out of the ground, that could slow it down. But speaking of Iran, it seems like the situation is heading south rapidly.
Well, the thing that makes that story so interesting, YouTube, is that, well, we are lifting the sanctions. Just at the moment, like every other time that we've done so, or that we've helped out Russia under President Trump's rule, just at the moment when they're losing, just at the moment when we're needed by Ukraine, it's almost as if we're not just accidentally helping Russia complete its mission of defeating Ukraine and allies, supposedly, but bolstering an enemy that wants to destroy Americans based on the original story. So I'm going to play the next 3 in succession, and we'll hear what those experts have to say.
Sources tell CNN that Russia is aiding Iran's war effort by providing intel on U.S. military targets. When President Trump was asked about this, here's how he reacted.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. I mean, but can I be honest? It's just, I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice to me. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else.
Sources tell CNN that Russia is now providing Tehran with intelligence about the location and movements of U.S. troops, of U.S. ships, of U.S. aircraft. Sources also tell us the U.S. has intelligence suggesting that China may be getting ready to provide Iran with money, spare parts, and even missile components. CBS News got to ask Secretary Pete Hegseth specifically about Russia's reported involvement.
The average American might hear that and think that's a big and dangerous deal, is it?
Well, we're tracking everything. Our commanders are aware of everything. We have the best intelligence in the world. We're aware of who's talking to who, why they're talking to them, how accurate that information might be, how we factor that into our battle plans, our CENTCOM commander. So we know what's going on, and the president has an incredible knack at knowing how to mitigate those risks.
Does this put U.S. personnel in any more danger than they otherwise would be?
Well,
the Russian involvement.
No one's putting us in danger. We're putting the other guys in danger.
For the first time, indicating Russian involvement in this war with Iran. Multiple sources familiar with the intelligence say that Russia is now giving Iran intelligence on U.S. military targets, including the locations and movements of U.S. troops, ships, and aircraft. One person said much of that intelligence consists of Russian satellite imagery. They have better capabilities than Iran does. CNN has asked the Kremlin and the Russian embassy for comment. The state news agency TASS reports that President Putin spoke with his Iranian counterpart on Friday, and during that call, they, quote, agreed to continue contacts.
Simple enough. Now that we're back, not to distract from the College Sports Commission, the ever-important College Sports Commission, not to distract from that, but like I said, devil's advocate. If the story you just heard happens to be more important than college football and volleyball, why is the question, how the hell does Russia know our intelligence, where we are, where we're going to be, our movements, and our plans of attack? I would suspect that everybody knows where our bases are. That's not intelligence. How does Russia know if they're providing intelligence that Iran doesn't know about our movements and our military? How do they know that? And why is no one asking that question? Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.